I knew exactly how my kids were going to act in stores. I knew how I was going to have them sleeping through the night. I was going to feed them perfect things. And I was not going to make a dang mistake. And then I had children.
Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. Discover yourself, break out of mediocrity, and become the mom you've always aspired to be. Here's your host, Kirsten Tyrell.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am joined by somebody I already told her she's my soul sister because her message and everything she shares on Periscope, which is the only way that I know her thus far, is so right in line with the mission of Marvelous Moms Club. And I couldn't dream up a better guest to have on here sharing with you some of the most beautiful stories and messages of motherhood. So welcome to the podcast, Shannon.
Oh my goodness, I just love you. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. And my assistant Lauren actually watched your Periscope. Do you know that today, actually, I got a private message on Instagram from Jenna Wood, who was like, you need to interview her. And I said, I am in like an hour.
Oh, I love Jenna. You know, there are such good people out there. Thank you so much. I'm seriously so excited. And I'm going to try to contain myself. Like I said, I just think I could talk about this for 9 million hours. So,
well, don't contain yourself, but I told you, we can have you back on. You could just be like our regular whenever we need some good inspiration and uplift.
You're so sweet.
So I think it's interesting, your kids' ages. I feel like you're exactly a year behind where my kids are. So tell everybody how old your kids are and what's going on in your household.
Okay, cool. So I have 3 little girls. We don't know how to make boys. I have a 5-year-old girl, a 3-year-old girl, and a little baby that just turned 1. It's the first birthday that I literally cried when I woke up. I cried because she was 1. And we just love life. We try to keep a very positive home. We do a lot of fun things. I'm very much into playing with them, being active. We live a very healthy lifestyle. I also am a pediatric ER nurse that takes a little bit of my time. I work at a pediatric hospital in Utah, and I'm one of the trauma nurses there. So I get a lot of questions about that and being a pediatric nurse and raising young kids and how difficult that must be. And that is the truth. Mm-hmm. It is definitely hard sometimes.
I can't imagine.
But I just work 1 to 2 days a week. So I still feel like I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I do have that outlet. Some people are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, honestly, being an ER nurse is a break from how hard motherhood is,
mm-hmm.
And motherhood to me is the hardest job. And so being on my feet for 12 hours and really literally saving kids' lives is absolutely difficult sometimes, but extremely rewarding. But I would not even say it holds a flame to how difficult and exhausting motherhood can be.
That is so true. And really, I mean, there's like a handful of the most stressful jobs. And I think, working in the ER would be among those top 5 things. So to compare motherhood to that and say that's even more stressful and hard and draining.
Totally.
Just puts in perspective. And it reminds me, and it reminds everybody listening, hopefully, that even on your worst day, like, you're still doing great because it's the hardest job in the world. And I don't think, do you think, like, you look around and you think, I don't think it's as hard for everybody as it is for me right now, but it's kind of comforting to know somewhere somebody is probably crying over the exact same issue. Somebody else's kids aren't listening to them. Somebody's drained, it's
totally. And that's why I just have like this insane desire to help all of us moms just realize that we're all in this together and we're all just doing the very best that we can. So there's no room for judgment or, making another mom feel bad about something or trying to give too much advice where it's not due or things like that, because we are all really just doing our very best. And at the end of the day, that's all our kids need. And we should just hold on to each other and realize that not one of us is as smart as all of us. So all of us together, we can do this, Yes. But if we isolate ourselves and feel like we're in it alone, then it can be really hard.
Yeah, it absolutely can. So you've got, your oldest is 5. So yeah, your kids are exactly a year younger than all 3 of my kids, but I do have boys and a girl.
You know how to make both.
I know how to make both. Or my husband does, however that works. So I'm curious to know when you kind of had, it's almost like a revelation, just an awareness of like, realizing what you're capable of, having that perspective you have right now where you want to shout it from the rooftops. At what point in your motherhood journey would you say you kind of had that realization? Did it have to get really hard before you kind of, I don't know, rose above? Or have you always been really conscious of like how special this whole thing is?
Yeah, great question. So a little bit of my background, like I was born nurturing, and I was born to be a mother, and I felt that since the earliest memories of my life. I was the babysitter in town that would be like, "Oh, babysit for free." I was the girl in church that would be like, "Can I hold your babies?" And I just always have wanted that. That has been my dream. That has been my passion from when I was a little child. And so I was going to be a perfect mom.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
was going to make no mistakes. I knew exactly how my kids were going to act in stores. I knew how I was going to have them sleeping through the night. I was going to have feed them perfect things. And I was not going to make a dang mistake. And then I had children. And I was humbled. And I just it is harder than I had ever dreamed it being.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is absolutely more wonderful than I ever dreamed it being as well. But I think what I have figured out is okay, so going back to that, when my baby was, I think, 4 days old and everything was fine. I love pregnancy and birth and everything. And I just get so giddy talking about it. But I brought my baby home and everything was great. And then she had a moment on day 4 where she just started to scream, like purple crying, almost stopped breathing, scream. And I was like, "Where's your mom? Where's your mom? I need to give her back." Like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I had that moment and I just looked at her like, "Oh my goodness, you are my baby and I am your mom. And
Yeah.
I have got to fix you. And if I don't fix you, nobody else is." That is a moment that I will never forget for as long as I live, looking at her and thinking, this is my baby that I have dreamed of. And now I need to, I'm here. That's it. It's me and her. And going from there to the point I am now and realizing that happiness and confidence go hand in hand, I think. Happiness in motherhood comes from confidence. And I relate a lot of this to work and the experience I've had with work. Being an ER pediatric nurse, we have children's lives in our hands a lot of times. And it takes a lot to be confident saying, I can take care of this child and I know that I am capable of saving this child. Until I was confident in that, I wasn't extremely happy in my job. I felt insecure. I felt like I wasn't good enough. How could a mother or somebody trust me with their child? And so I went through this moment in work where I thought, you know what, I'm going to dedicate every ounce that I can to become confident in my job. And it was like a light switch. It was like the most beautiful thing when I finally reached that moment of confidence. I was happy.
Yeah.
And I thought that is exactly how motherhood is. If we are not confident moms and we're not confident in what we're doing and the way we're loving our children, how are we going to be happy? And how are we going to find the joy in day to day if we're not confident in what we're doing? So that has just been like an aha moment and thing for me.
Wow. That's really, really a cool correlation because especially, I mean, with any job, but especially that job, you can't really go into that half-hearted because parents do want to feel like trust and secure with the people who are handling their children and taking care of them. And if you aren't confident, they're not going to be very comforted at all, you know?
Totally.
And so the same goes for your children. They have that same sensor. Like they know when mom's okay and they know when mom's not okay. And when you're not okay, it either causes them to go even crazier, in my experience, or they just are super humble and they're comforted, like knowing, okay, mom's a real person, mom has feelings, I need to be there for her. But that confidence it really does lead to such amazing things, and it can create that beautiful peace that needs to be felt in your home. So I think that's a really cool life lesson and connection that you made because your job is pretty incredible, but your job as a mother is just as incredible, if not more incredible. It is more incredible.
Totally more incredible. Totally more incredible. Yes.
So that's amazing.
That's right.
I think you're right. And a lot of us are lacking in that confidence department because there are mommy wars, because there are so many things out there in the world telling us what we need to do to be successful mothers and to be successful human beings and to be perfect when really Nobody is, and nobody's ever going to be. And your journey is going to look so different from the next person. So finding that confidence in the way you're choosing to do it and what you know that your children need. Say it again. Confidence equates to...
I just think happiness in motherhood comes from
Yes.
confidence.
That's it right there. There's
Yes.
the title of your episode.
And we all want to be happy. You know? I
Yes.
just want to be going through this I think so many of us have dreamed of this, like me. I don't think I'm the only one that has felt this. We've
No.
dreamed of having these children and what life would look like. And then all of a sudden we have them and we're tired and we're not meeting our expectations and we're going day in and day out and we're thinking to ourselves, is this what I've dreamed of?
Mm-hmm.
These children writing on my walls and making messes and making things come out of me that I didn't even know I had, impatient. Like, I didn't know I was an impatient person until I had children. And then I'm like, wow, maybe I do need to work on my patience. But I just think some of us go day to day and it can wear on us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are not happy, then our children aren't happy.
Yeah.
And we are their world. And if we are not living in a happy, peaceful, wonderful world, then they're living in a very scary world.
Mm-hmm.
And in this time, we can actually pretend that we're not living in a scary world, and we're raising young kids.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think it's great to keep in mind that we are their world and to be happy and positive and kind, because that is what they compare that is their world.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing too, that you would say that, because I was telling you a little bit before, when I started the podcast, I had the tagline, break out of mediocrity and become the mom you've always aspired to be. And that was because I believe, like you said, we all had that dream. We all had that vision in our head of the mother we were going to be. And it wasn't even just the technical things, like I'm going to have good sleepers, I'm going to have good eaters, I'm going to be perfect, I'm never going to lose my temper. It was it was just this ideal that we had in our minds because we knew how much we yearned to be mothers and we wanted to have this like amazing mantle placed upon us. Like you really, really have this dream vision of what it's going to be like. And then reality hits and it's kind of like, oh, it's not really what I pictured. It's not really what I wanted. And so then you fight yourself trying to get to this like perfection. And sometimes it can lead to frustration. And I think at the end of the day, as long as you're striving to work towards that dream, that beautiful vision you had of motherhood, then you're fine. You don't have to be perfect. But if you're striving for that, and you're striving to create peace and connect with your children, even if you have awful, horrible days where you totally fail. I mean, it's never a complete fail because you're still a mom. You know how the days when you're just like, I just can't do this anymore. And then you realize, I have to. Like, it's not optional. You don't get to walk away. You don't get days off. You don't get to quit. It's the most, I think, disciplining job because you're constantly... You can't take the title away. You have to be mom.
Absolutely. And I think that is so... you just hit it right on the head. Confidence to me in motherhood is not comparing yourself to another mom, because we can't do that. We'll drive ourselves crazy. We have to compare ourselves to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And as long as day by day we are improving, then we can find confidence in that. There is no room for us to compare ourselves to another person, because there's always going to be someone more organized. There's always going to be somebody more active with their children. There's always going to be somebody doing something better than you. Mm-hmm. But what we need to know is that we're doing something better than somebody else too. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, good, bad, whatever, we are all just trying. Mm-hmm. And as long as we are trying day by day to become better for our children, I truly believe that our children were sent to us because we were going to be the best moms for them. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be a better mom than you for your children, and you weren't going to be a better mom for me for my children. We were sent to our children were sent to us because we are capable of being the very best moms to them. And if nothing else, we can find confidence in that. Yeah. That we need to be their moms because they need us. And as long as we love them, then we can find confidence in at least loving them and knowing that they need us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know if you follow Simply Sadie Jane on Instagram or if you heard her episode here on the podcast, but yes, it was such a good one because she talked about that. She kind of called me out on, I was trying to say like, oh, I bet you're on this side of the fence just wishing that I could figure this out, like with being healthy. And she's like, no, we're never like on the other side of the fence. We're all walking down the same path, and sometimes I'm a few steps ahead of you in one department and you're a few steps ahead of me in another, but like we're constantly pushing and pulling each other up the hill because we're all on the same climb. And she just kind of came up with that on the fly, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And it's exactly what you're just saying, you know, like
Yeah,
we're
I
here
think
to
about
push and uplift.
totally. Yeah, I didn't hear that part, but I think that that's beautiful. And just thinking that we're all running the same race. And sometimes we're going to get tired and another person needs to help us out, and then they're going to get tired and we're going to help us out. But I think it's good. I think that races are good. I actually love to run races. And I think it's good to feel that
Motivation.
Yeah, to become better, because I think that we need that for our children. But I also think we need to run races sometimes holding hands,
Yes.
you know, and just not having to be better or in front of another person. We just need to run side by side and help each other out, because that's how we're all going to find success in the end, and happiness, really.
Yeah, that's so true. So I love something that you said in your questionnaire that you sent back to me, and it was about like one of your skills as a mother and how you don't maybe I need to read it, but you're talking about like, you know, you've learned how to love your children and how to connect with them, and not in just like a Pinterest parties or super fun adventures type of thing, but like you love them the way that they individually need to be connected with and loved. So tell me kind of like what that looks like for you with, I mean, I know every child is different, and how you kind of learned that. Because for me, I'm kind of like we're either going to do a crazy adventure or we're going to sit on the couch watching TV. And I have a really hard time disciplining myself and making the time to individually connect with my kids sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a book actually that's called the way to really love your children, or something like that. And I don't read many books, but I do read, occasionally I'll read a motherhood book, just when I'm feeling a little bit stagnant. But it talks a lot about how I think the perception for a lot of moms to love their children is to go to the zoo, and we need to have the best birthday party, you know, with bounce houses and, you know, all of this fun stuff. We need to always be doing something with our children, and that's how we show love to them. But really, it is absolutely incorrect. The way that we can love our children is by getting to know our children individually and helping them grow into the people that they were sent here to be. Now, I had this picture of who my children were going to be before I had children. And then I had children, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you are so much different than what I had in mind, but so much more lovely, you know? And so letting them grow into that person and just loving them through getting to know them, and not necessarily having to do things day in and day out, because really at the end of the day, our kids just need a happy mom. They don't need a mom that's going to be everything and give everything to them. They just need a happy mom that's going to love them, and that will sit down on the floor with them and look them in the eye and let them know that they are loved and that they are heard. And I think that is, as soon as you can realize that, actually motherhood becomes a lot easier. As soon as you know that that's really all they need. And then the extra stuff is just fluff. And it's wonderful too, but it's just fluff on top of it.
I love that. I needed to hear that. I say that all the time. I always get the message that I need to at the right time. And I hope everybody listening feels the same way. I mean, it's nice. You can go and choose different episodes based on what you need. But for me, it's so cool how it always lands in my lap right when I need it. Like your message is just, it's candy to my ears today. So thank you.
Candy. Well, I love candy.
Doesn't everybody?
I know, seriously.
Well, I think you're absolutely incredible and full of so much light and knowledge. So let's talk a little bit more about your job as an ER nurse. And let's also talk about that Periscope that I was telling you I watched before we started chatting today, because you gave some really awesome tools on Periscope for mothers when it comes to discipline, which I think everybody needs to hear, because sometimes that word, it comes with like negativity and it's overwhelming and none of us know what we're doing. And when you figured out a thing that was working for you and your kids, you're like, I need to tell everybody. So now that you have, you know, a few thousand people listening, share that with an even bigger audience.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to the ER nurse thing. I want to talk a little bit about this, because I think that, and you know, I shared with my husband, I said, who am I? This was a while ago, but I'm like, who am I to give advice to other moms? Because I'm just a normal, simple mom that has 3 kids who has a little job that just is very, very normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and then he looks at me and he goes, "Are you crazy? Every person on this earth has been given a gift and a passion, and we need to use those gifts and passions." So whoever is listening, think about that. Think of what you have inside of you that you just want to share, and you just want to, you can't stop talking about it. And it's no different than a some of these bloggers that do fashion. Who are they to give us advice on what clothes to wear? Well,
Mm-hmm.
they are good at it and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
When you see a good sale, let's all tell each other about a good sale. So there's some
Yeah.
things that I do as a mother, and I'm just like, oh, this has made my job so much easier, and I just want to help another person. So please know that my advice is coming from the most humble place that there is, just knowing how much it has helped me and how much I just want to bring other mothers to this place I once was, to this place I am now, because it's just so much easier. So
I love
let me
it.
just talk a little bit about discipline, because every mother on this earth needs to do it at one point or another.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes. So disciplining and punishment are two very, very different things. We do not punish in our house ever. It's complete discipline. And discipline comes along with consequences, which really consequences you should only be giving 10 to 15% of the time anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
going back to this disciplining thing, first you have to understand your children. Where are your children's misbehaviors coming from? It's generally 2 places. It's either attention or it's power. So figuring out which one they're coming from, first of all, are they needing more attention or are they needing more power? And once you've established that, it makes it a lot easier to give them one or another. So as soon as so choice plus consequences equal responsibility in my brain. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we teach our kids responsibility. So I thought, I need to figure out a way to make my kids more responsible without punishing them for their misbehavior.
Mm-hmm.
So what we came up with, and this isn't all from my brain, I've taken my brain along with other very much more educated, bigger brains, and I've put something together that has changed our home, and it's been wonderful. And what that is first keeping in mind, my child is not giving me a hard time. My child is having a hard time. You need to realize that as a mother, and you become so much more empathetic. So discipline, teaching, punishment means teaching by hurting. Try not to punish. Kids do not learn that way. So what we do in our home when there is a conflict or misbehavior of any sort, whether it's just one child or 2 children, we stop the event. If it is, 90% of things don't need to be stopped at that time, or they can be handled later, but we stop whatever's happening and we bring them to this bench. It can be any sort of place in your home. It needs to be in an open space, not in there, not locked away in their rooms, not in a scary place, just an open space in your home. So we have this little bench in our living room, and we bring them to the bench, and we call it our quiet bench. Some have called it repentance bench. Some have had different names for it, but it's just a bench that is a safe place for your kids. They go to the bench, and you get down into their level with them, and you do 3 things every single time. You first regulate yourself as a mother. And if you're not ready to regulate yourself and your emotions, then you can't talk to them at that time. And you have to, and I often will say, Mommy is too frustrated or too mad to talk right now. I need you guys to stay here while I go take a deep breath. And they see that, like, wow, I really made Mom mad. She's trying really hard not to yell at me. They process that, and they're able to process that into their own lives and say, you know what, if I'm really mad, maybe I need to process things before I treat somebody like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I regulate myself, and I say to them, I validate them next. So as soon as I'm regulated, which hopefully it can be very soon, I have to validate them, validate their feelings, validate why they did what they did. Was there a root cause of something? Because sometimes they can act out, but we don't know what precipitated that event. So we need to hear them out and validate them. Now, it's not this, she did that and I did, and he did this, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, what did you do and why did you do it? And then you go to the next child. What did you do and why did you do it? And we hear them out. After we hear them out, then we all problem solve together. And you just simply, what could we do better, or how can we fix this problem? And every mother will have different verbiage for how they want to do it. But if you can follow those 3 simple steps every time, you need to regulate yourself, validate their feelings, and then problem solve together, then you cannot leave that bench without a hug. Every single time they need a hug, and a lot of times it turns into laughter, and then they go about their day. If you can do those three things over and over and over again, your children will get it. And I'm talking like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years old. You can start as young as you want with your children, but they will start to get it, and they will start to realize how to first feel. They know how to feel, and then they know how to communicate. And communication is huge, especially with a parent. And so if they can learn how to regulate their own emotions, learn how to communicate their emotions, and then problem solve, eventually it's magic. They don't even need to go to the bench. Oftentimes they'll have a little, tippy in the living room. I'll be in the kitchen and they're fixing it by themselves. And I don't even need to step in. And that's a dream
awesome.
As a parent, right?
Yes.
Obviously, it doesn't work every time. Obviously, they sit on the bench for a long time, and it's not a timeout thing. My kids actually don't even know what timeout means. I don't put them into timeout. I don't think it teaches them much. If you put a child into a closed room door and they kick and scream, they're not learning anything in that moment. All they're doing is escalating the situation. Negativity never drives kids to improve. I think only positivity. So if we are helping them work through their problems, and it can be dang exhausting. Sometimes you're like, oh, the stinking bench again. But the more we can do it, the quicker they learn, and the less we're going to have to do it. I mean, all we're all trying to do is work ourselves out of a job, right? So if we can do it sooner than later, it makes our jobs a whole lot easier. So that's how we discipline at our house. And then if you come up with, we also have different rules in our home that if they break the rules, like we had a really hard time eating. We love to have dinners together. Every single night we have a dinner together. And if the child does not sit down and eat the meal, they don't have to eat the whole meal, but they need to stay for X amount of time and have dinner with us, then they don't get snacks the next day, because that's what we attributed not being hungry to. That's the only thing we could come up with, but we had to come up with some sort of consequence. So just coming up with little basic consequences throughout your home to add on to that discipline helps a lot. But I think in the big gist of things, see, Kristen, I told you, I could just go on and on.
I love it so much.
Blab and blab and blab.
Please do keep blabbing. I just love it. I think this is important for everybody to hear. I mean, I love a good parenting book as much as anybody, but sometimes it's a very long explanation, and it just makes you feel a little bit bad about the fact that you're not doing it right. And your message is so simple, and it's something somebody, I'm going to start doing that today, because I'm at my wit's end right now with my kids, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old. They're all in different, they're all frustrating for different things.
For sure.
But I know that that's true, because the positive reinforcement I'm not saying it doesn't always work, but sometimes it escalates past the point of you can't, when your children are hitting each other, you can't say, I'm just so grateful that you guys know how to be nice,
I know. Yes. It is hard, but the bench becomes a really safe place where they actually, at some moments, I look at their eyes and I'm like, you're kind of excited to get on this bench and figure this out, aren't you? Because you have a plan, and I can just see it. And it's not a place where we yell at each other. So they don't resist me ever to go to the bench, because it's a safe place for them. Yeah. And that's hard. And so remember, breathe and step away if you can't talk to them, and that's okay. Sometimes they have to. Sometimes they just have to sit there, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think that's the principle of timeout that is useful, but that people don't use, is that it's that time to step away from the situation. But for children, like you said, all it's going to do, when my son goes to timeout, it's when he's screaming. He's in there screaming because he's frustrated that we're not hearing what the issue was, or that we're not hearing his side of the story. Yeah. But it's that I like having the safe zone where they know you're not here for a certain amount of time. You're just here till I cool off, or till you cool off, and then we can have a conversation. I really, really like that.
And it gives them control. And I think they really, really like the control. If I can regulate my emotions and problem solve quickly and tell my sister, and that's another thing, I don't make my kids say sorry to anybody, but they do, because they get it. I don't say, you need to say sorry to them, because I don't think that if they're not sorry, then that's the problem. It's not that they're not telling them that they're sorry. So figuring out a way to help them learn why they should be sorry is way more important than actually having them verbalize that they're sorry. And And then they end up saying they're sorry anyway, and so it works out.
I love that. That's so true. Yeah, I like that a lot. So, in your Periscope, and just even my own curiosity, and what I think is really special about your job combined with, your motherhood, is I can't even like fathom having the emotional strength to be an ER pediatric nurse. I can't imagine the things that you probably have to encounter, and how amazing and rewarding it would be at some times, and how like heart-wrenching it would be at other times. And I think it's really cool when you combine that perspective with being a mother to your own children, because you're seeing sometimes parents in a desperate situation where they're losing a child, or their child, comes out of it and they just have so much gratitude. So talk about that correlation and just some of the lessons you've learned and how that's maybe helped you cherish. And tell everybody else, like remind them, because I feel like we need to be reminded all the time. We don't want to live in like this doomsday perspective where it's like our children could die at any time, but because it happens, but it's not happening like to everybody, but still keeping that perspective of, like you said, you're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah, you're not. And I appreciate you bringing this up, because this is one of the things like that comes from the deepest part of my soul is I see mothers lose their children often. Mm-hmm. And it makes me appreciate my children. Maybe that's why we're so positive. Maybe that's why I want to just scream from the rooftops, love your children, because you could lose them in 5 minutes or tomorrow, or you never know. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. And I see these mothers that bring, without disclosing too much information, there's been 2 recently, I won't give a timeline, that have been brought into the ER lifeless. One very little, one a little bit bigger. And these parents have literally in their arms brought them into our doors lifeless and laid them on the bed. And our hands go to this child with all the powers from above and with all of our medical, interventions. And we save this child. But in the meantime, and there's some we don't save, and that's for a different day because I don't want to cry. But the ones that we do save, this child recently, there was a little baby, and as we were resuscitating her, she began to give, she had little red splotches on her body. She was completely white and gray when she was brought to us without a pulse. We resuscitated her, and you would see a little white or a little red patch on her belly, and then it went to her shoulder, and then it went to her leg, and then just more red patches, more red patches, more red patches, and it just looked like a horrible rash. But really, it was just a spot of reperfusion, and pretty soon she was pink. And I just get chills talking about it because there's this lifeless child that is laid on this bed, and through the power of a team, I am going to get emotional. Through a power of a team, that we can bring these children to life. And that's like motherhood. We're not in this. I couldn't have saved that child by myself, but with each other, we can save these little people, and we can, it's a team, and it's an effort. And as long as we're trying and we're working together, I don't look at the person next to me and say, I can do this better than you, and push them aside. We work together and we save these little children that are given to us. And then, going back to that mother of looking at her desperate face, like, please help my baby. And then her baby's pink again. And the gratitude that she can show to us, that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us going. And we lose one once in a while, but we save a lot more than we lose. And it keeps us going, because as a mommy heart to a mommy heart, I can't actually put myself in their shoes at work, or else I would have to quit my job. Mm-hmm. But I can for a moment, and it is something so sacred and beautiful that I can't not even put into words.
Yeah.
So people ask me how I do it, and it is seeing a mother who almost loses her child in part of my care, and then they walk out with their child. Like, that is what keeps me going. And it is being in those moments with those mothers is just the most sacred, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. I can't even.
Wow. And it translates over to you come home and you realize how fragile and valuable life is for your children. How can you want to come home And even though we're human and you can get exhausted after a 12-hour shift, it could be really easy to yell. But I can imagine that would keep you in check with like, how can I yell at you when I just saw what I saw? Or you're so precious.
Absolutely.
You're the baby that I longed for. You're the baby I held and I never wanted anybody to hurt. And I don't know. I just think your message is so needed and it's so powerful. And it's something I'm going to listen to this episode on repeat.
No, you're so sweet.
It's true. I think it's very necessary and we need to be reminded not only like to take care of ourselves because we have to take care of them, but really like it has to be the most unselfish thing that we do ever. I mean,
absolutely.
You have to push to the deepest caverns of your heart because these children are precious.
Absolutely. And all that we all need is effort. You know, before this, I asked my little girl, I said, honey, and she's very intelligent for a 5-year-old, so keep that in mind. I said, what do you think makes mommy a marvelous mom? And she said the most beautiful, simple thing to me. And she just said, because you're always with me. Aww. And I thought, that's it. That is what a 5-year-old sees, you know, so much greatness in. It's because I'm with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is the whole key. Just be with your kids and love them because that's really all that they need.
I love that. So would that be your answer now too because of her beautiful answer on what makes you a marvelous mom?
Oh, goodness. Yes. I would say that the effort that I put into being my kids, I can fully say that that's what makes me feel like I'm a marvelous mom. Effort, not because of the things that I do, but because I put in effort. I don't find my confidence in comparing myself to other moms, but comparing myself to myself day by day. And as long as I'm getting better each day, then I think I'm marvelous.
I think you're marvelous too. And I think you've inspired.
Dang it, you are too. And I love that you're doing this because I think it's the coolest thing ever.
Oh, thank you. I think it's very needed. And I hope everybody listening has felt the same way I feel. Lots of chills, lots of tears. I just think you're wonderful. And now you get to go off to work to save even more babies and children, which
yes,
you're just a rock star.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I just love you, and thank you for doing this because you are blessing so many moms' lives.
Thank you, Shannon. You're so sweet. That just touched my heart.
Oh, I'm so glad.
All right, guys. For those of you listening, I hope that you've had tissues nearby, and I hope you go on to have a marvelous day. Go snuggle your babies and children, and go create your safe little bench or corner or somewhere in the house where you can start having more positive discipline and take all of the messages from Shannon and just go and do them because they're wonderful.
You're so great. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, have a great day and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, one more thing before you go. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. If you're an iPhone user, search in your podcast app for Marvelous Moms Club and subscribe so that you're sure to catch every new episode as it airs. We have so many marvelous episodes coming, and we don't want you to miss any. Also, head over to marvelousmomsclub.com to check out past episodes and join the club so that you never miss an amazing, marvelous episode. Thanks for listening.